Loren Meadows of GatorBaitMedia.com with the best shoe game in the Gator media. And tonight, we got a good one for you. We will be joined by Rob Brown of SEC Sidelines to talk the hire of Jon Sumrall, what went wrong with Lane Kiffin, although we're not going to dwell on that, and what's ahead for the Gators going forward with a guy under Jon Sumrall. We'll also be joined by Swamp 247's Zach Goodall to touch on, once again, the hiring of Coach Sumrall, but also a interesting article that Zach wrote, kind of looking under the hood, as we may say, at Florida Athletic Director Scott Stricklin, who's been under fire the last few days for what is conceived as botching the hiring of Lane Kiffin, and then pivoting to Sumrall. And then finally, we will be joined by our man from Iowa, way up there in Iowa, Joe, the Animal Fulford from Half Full and a Cup of Joe. He'll join us to talk about all things Florida Gators. We look in on the Florida Gators as they take on the Duke Blue Devils at Cameron Indoor Stadium as part of the SEC ACC Challenge. All that and more tonight. The Sidelines Live team would like to thank our sponsors, Meldon Law and Titan MRI and Imaging. Subscribe to the Lowdown with Loren Meadows on YouTube and Facebook, as well as our partner shows, SEC Sidelines, The Buddy Martin Show, and Scarboard Knows. And follow yours truly on Instagram at Ohio Gator for Life, TikTok at Ohio Gator for Life, and X at Real Ohio Gator. Let's get to it. Interesting weekend, folks. The Gators basically had a lot going on. And at the center of it was the hire of Jon Sumrall. It's interesting. Love to hear your comments. But, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to kind of just start by saying I think that if you try to compare Billy Napier and Jon Sumrall, it's almost unfair to Jon Sumrall because just because they came from Group of Five schools, everybody pointed to the state of Louisiana, even though Louisiana Lafayette is totally different from Tulane. One is in the Sun Belt, one is in the American, that, a conference that has definitely had their share of big wins. But Jon Sumrall, if you were at the press conference or you watched the press conference, had a little different tone. It was a little bit more of Kurt Signetti, or, just a little bit more bravado. I can remember back to, even like Urban Meyer's first press conference at Florida and at Ohio State, and just the confidence of being a winner. Right now, Duke is leading Florida 48-43, but just a little different tone, Brendan. We welcome in super producer Brendan Martin, of all things Sidelines Live Network, but just a little different tone, a little bit more what I call a football type press conference. He mentioned players, he mentioned things that he saw. He talked about watching the game before his team went out there on Saturday night and really being impressed with a lot of the players that are on the floor, that were on the field and things like that. And it just seemed a little different. You had Urban Meyer there. You had Spurrier there. You had Urban Meyer, saying that this is, a great hire, that he's tough. That was one word he sent to Buddy Martin and said, give me one word. He said tough. You're talking about a former SEC linebacker, a guy that, self-proclaimed worked his way into being an average player and then dealt with the heartache of losing his career as a senior. So, there's an edge there. And we could talk about all these things, and you could talk about what I call the fluff that people talk about, Brendan, the player experience, the food, the this, that, and the other. But I think this is a guy that actually gets it, that you're judged by the 12 Saturdays in the fall. And if you look at the staffs that he was part of at Kentucky, he brought one of his former colleagues there today with the hiring of Brad White as defensive coordinator for the Gators. They had a lunch pail mentality when Kentucky was at their height under Mark Stoops. And you get a little bit of that with Jon Sumrall, and then sprinkle in, once again, a self-proclaimed, I'm going to go out and get an explosive offensive coordinator. I think this is a guy that at least at the face value gets it.
OC, DC, HBC. Come on, man. I
Yeah.
mean, ACDC, PCP, LSD. I mean, dude, I got to get it all to get through the next season. Look, he sounds like a football coach. I mean, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You give stand up there, give props to Tulane, the Green Wave. He's excited for his guys. That's hard to see. I don't care. Any Gator doesn't like that, but but he did it in a really good way. And he did it in a way that a football coach does it, in a way that, obviously somebody else named Lane Kiffin didn't really have much success doing it that way. He exited the right way, and he's doing it the right thing. Look, he's saying all the right things. He seems to embrace the culture. He really seems like he wants to win right now. And he said
Mm-hmm.
that in his press conference. He said, "Look,
Right.
he said I have a plan to win long term, but I have a plan to win right now."
Right.
And that is what Gators have really longed to hear for a while because of the hurry up and wait mentality that we've had. Next year the cupboards were bare. I mean, we've had every excuse under the sun as to why we're rebuilding. But I think that right away, I think he understands that it's on 10. Gators want to win, and he's been brought in to win football games, and I think that's very clear. And I think we saw that immediately with the acquisition of his defensive coordinator from Kentucky today, which I think is very exciting. First piece, don't you think?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a guy that runs a pro style type of defense is going to put people in place to make plays. I think will demand a physical brand of football out of his group. And yeah, I mean, I like the hire Brad White. It's not necessarily. I mean, obviously they probably are friends. I heard someone ask him about hiring his friends, and he said, I'm not necessarily hire. I do have friends that are good coaches, but I'm not going to hire all my friends. I'm going to hire the best coaches that I possibly can hire. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of keeping my eye on the Gators 48-45 Duke right now. But yeah, I mean, I think it was I think he's got the mentality and he understands. It's a guy that played in the swamp and had some not some success as a player, but has some success as a coach, has felt the allure of the swamp. I think his kids, he talked about his family really embracing the atmosphere. And I think you're going to see an edge there. I think you're going to see somebody who's extremely aggressive on special teams. They're going to try and really affect the game in all three phases. And I really, there's no guarantee that Lane Kiffin was going to come here. Somebody said to me, well, we'll feel bad when Lane wins 2 national titles at LSU, wins a national title in 2 years. That's not a given. And if you look at LSU's schedule in the next 2 years, that's definitely not a given. And they got their own issues as well. But if you take Florida, they're in a position with a young group of people, one of the best backs in the country, a great group of receivers. I'm sure they're going to try and shore up the offensive line through the transfer portal with some of those losses. Maybe get some guys on defense that can really help and really contribute, particularly up front. And then they're going to be, in a position to make plays. So, at this point, I think it's I think it's a solid hire. What will it be? What will it be, 2-3 years down the road? We don't know. But like I said, I think this is a guy that understands you don't talk around people. Maybe that's the best thing, Brendan, is you and I have sat through a million Billy Napier press conferences and things such as that. And it was like he was talking around you. Like somebody said to me, a friend of the show, Brent English, he didn't use any big words. There were no big words. There were no innuendo. It was straight at you. This is what we want to do. And this is the football. So,
Well, look, I think you're right. I think a lot of these two guys know a little bit more about it. We have a question in the chat that I would like to address and throw it out there, and then let you have your show back, Loren, because
help
I have no
yourself, sir.
business doing that. But Brad White, acquisition defensive coordinator from Kentucky, Zach, welcome to the show. Rob, welcome to
Hey,
the Loren show. Zach, can you give us a little insight on Brad White? I put you on the spot, right? Welcome to the show. We got a question in our chat room about him.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate to be with you guys as always. He was someone that when it became apparent that Jon Sumrall was going to be the coach and it was such a whirlwind right there, it was hard to really pin down what he was planning on doing. If he was going to bring his staff with him from Tulane or if it was going to be outside hires. And then it started quickly moving toward the possibility, if not likelihood, of it being outside hires. We obviously heard Sumrall talk about that yesterday, how he's not necessarily looking to hire his friends, and that goes without saying, the people he's worked with for extended periods of time, but make the best hires. And Brad White is one that definitely makes sense. I mean, obviously, it's been a bit downhill for Kentucky, I think, especially in the NIL era. I think that's something people really need to keep in mind with the stats from the last couple of years. But that defense has still had a really high success rate and generally been a good defense that has fallen victim to poor offensive play at times. And he's been at Kentucky for a while. He was named the outside linebackers coach in 2018, and in his first year on the job, Josh Hines Allen, now with the Jaguars, became a first-round pick, 7th overall, had one of the best seasons of defending at any position in the SEC in conference history. I think 17 sacks, 21 tackles for loss, something like that. Just absurd production that vaulted him into that first-round status. And it's worth noting that in the early part of his tenure, Jon Sumrall was on staff as Brad White became the defensive coordinator in 2019. Sumrall became the inside linebackers coach and worked under White for a couple of years. Another smaller connection, I guess, in a way, Dave Caldwell, the new general manager, was the general manager who took Josh Hines Allen at number 7 overall with Jacksonville there. White steps into the defensive coordinator role, and there's a solid stretch there, 4 or 5 years, where Kentucky really had one of the better defenses in the country. I want to say it was in 2022 they peaked under 20 points per game. I want to say they were like top 11 in scoring defense and probably top 20, top 25 in yards per game allowed. It's more of a 3-4 scheme, but they'll mix some stuff up. I think we heard Billy Gonzalez talk about it with Mark Stoops earlier in the season when they were getting ready to play Kentucky, just the type of player that they tried to recruit there. There's a lot of length and beef on the defensive line. They try and run a strong rotation. So whatever Florida fans think about the rotations we've seen in years past, I generally have thought that that's what you want to do on the defensive line. And I would imagine we are going to continue seeing that, maybe just different styles of deployments and different packages. But one way or another, you're going to get length up front and a mix of different fronts. And the same thing will happen in the secondary. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a continuing trend with, you look at players like Devin Moore, the 6'3" cornerback. We might see more longer cornerbacks and maybe even safeties as well. Maybe even that star position, we could see them kind of bulk up because they have tried to lean on bigger defensive backs who just have more range. They have a bigger, they call it a catch radius for receivers. So I guess the anti-catch radius in the secondary, guys that can go and get their hand on the ball, force turnovers. That's something that Kentucky's always been really good at.
Yeah, I think, when you look at, once again, everybody wants these names. They want to talk about the names that everybody else throws out there. But, I've said this on many occasions. There's a lot of good football coaches out there that people don't know. And Brad White is not a household name, but all I harken you back is you saw what they did to the Gators this year. You saw what basically the thorn in the side that has been Kentucky has been led by Brad White in a lot of ways, so right. The times that they physically beat Florida up, there's your answer. Forget looking at what, that's it. There it is. You got the resume and, it's there on the ticker for you. That's all you need there, Rob. So, I talked about an edge, and those Stoops teams up until the end always had that edge. Now, they didn't always have the talent, but when they had the talent and the edge, you better buckle up and play them. So, Rob, you look at a guy like Brad White right away, it's a little different tenor than maybe a Ron Roberts, who you've thought a lot of, but may not have been as well liked within the facility. Brad White seems to be a really good guy too, somebody who gets along with everybody. And I spoke to my friend again whose son played for White at Kentucky and then Sumrall at Tulane. Said if he was going to get into coaching, it would be with those two guys, Rob.
Well, Brad White's a guy that Dave Bartu and I were talking about. And I mean, I knew he was offered the job, but I was asked not to say that I'm, Mr. Information, but that is the Kiffin killer too. Okay. He derailed Kiffin. Look at all the Georgia struggles up there, 12, 13, 14-point victories for them. I think it's a damn good hire. Again, I wanted Sumrall at Auburn, and Auburn put a lot of demands on him about who he was going to keep. And, Jon Sumrall's like, look, if the ship goes down, I'm going to be the captain, and it's going to be my people, and the band will play like the Titanic all the way to the bottom. And so Auburn's loss as far as gain. Alex Golesh, all these coaches, they came from the American Conference. But y'all know, and like Zach's saying and you're saying, Loren, Brad White is a really good rising star. If he was on a different team, he'd be receiving as much attention as Will Stein from Oregon, who's never been a head coach, nor has Brad. But when Kirby Smart got hired, he'd never been a head coach. Neither had Ryan Day. There's a lot of guys out there. Everybody is just, look, you can't go to Macy's and say, all right, door number 3, that's the coach that's going to win us at least 11 or 12 games a year. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
I got 4 kids. You hope that they turn out great. You got to coach them. You got to develop them.
And Zach, I want to, 2 things, and I want to kind of ease into another, I guess, topic that we talked about on Saturday, and you kind of made me aware, say, hey, this is coming. So, look for it. And but any names for offensive coordinator? We threw a few around on Sunday with the announcement, but what are you hearing as far as possible candidates at offensive coordinator?
Yeah, on my end, honestly, I feel like it's been a little bit quieter than defensive coordinator. Like Brad was someone that was put on my radar pretty quickly once it became apparent that it was going to be the outside hire. Buster Faulkner is someone that has come up from Georgia Tech. Cade Bell, obviously, I think that he was going to be floated no matter what with how Pittsburgh's done, and you pair it with being, the son of Kerwin. And the offensive coordinator from Tennessee too, and I just would struggle to get his last name pronounced correctly.
Right.
But I know that those 3 have been kind of the common names to go out there, but I think it's important to know that during Jon Sumrall's meeting, as well as Dave Caldwell was there in the Zoom meeting with 2026 commitments, like the day that the hire was announced. They told the staff, the families and the commitments that they were hoping to bring in coordinators with NFL experience. That obviously is the case with Brad White. He spent 6 years with the Indianapolis Colts, worked his way up from, I want to say, quality control to assistant position coach to position coach, and then made his way back to Kentucky at that point after Chuck Pagano was fired. You look at those 3 candidates that have been all over the place, and I'm not trying to say they definitively won't be the hire, but none of them has any NFL coaching experience, and nor do they even have NFL playing experience. So, things change. Sometimes you overpromise and underdeliver, and that's something that, is appealing to hear, the prospect of it being someone with NFL experience. But if we're going to hold Sumrall to his word, if we know that that is what he's looking for, it makes me think that the board should be expanded a little bit when it comes to the public perception surrounding the offensive coordinator hire. Like, I don't know if he's on their list, but he was someone that I at least included on my hot board pretty quickly, is Brian Dabble, the let go New York Giants head coach. Again, not to say that he's someone they're seriously considering,
but it's a name. Yeah.
2025
guys available
even in the NFL. Yeah. And obviously did wonders with Josh Allen in Buffalo, was the offensive coordinator for Alabama's 2017 national championship winning team. And he's been around. His offense was explosive. You think short term, and you look at Josh Allen's development, you think it's a pretty good pairing for DJ Lagway and the type of player that people still believe he can be.
Right.
So it's to me, it feels as though defensive coordinator, especially with Jon Sumrall's experience with White and as a defensive-minded coach, that one felt like it was going to come together a little quickly. I could see offensive coordinator maybe taking a little bit more time, maybe not long, but at least it wasn't going to be as immediate.
And Rob, we discussed on Sunday another name, Neil Brown, who, for us football folks, we understand the name and know that name as somebody who has done really well in the offensive game. But, this is going to be as key a hire maybe as head coach, just from, I'm an optics guy, and the optics of what do they run. We're going to have James DiVirgilio on here breaking down their stuff. That's got to be key, because you do have a quarterback kind of at a crossroads. You got to, what is looking to be a generational, running back, and then a really good group of receivers returning and coming in. So it's going to be key that they get the right guy with the right system to maybe correct DJ. And I had asked, I talked to Coach Spurrier after the press conference, and I said, do you think DJ, can be corrected? And he said, absolutely. I said, it's funny. I said, I think a lot of it was the system, a little, him too, but a lot of the system. He said, yeah, you might be right. He said, probably a little bit of both. So there is hope for DJ Lagway, Rob, but that offense is going to be key there.
Yeah. Well, Neil Brown would be a good one. He's working with Arch Manning, former, Troy and West Virginia coach. Remember what Ohio State did with Chip Kelly? He's going to resurface somewhere. Chip Kelly's a name I would keep on the radar. He's a smug, unhappy little man, but he can win. He is a grouch from New Hampshire, but so is George O'Leary. So is Dan Mullen. I would keep my eyes on those two guys right there.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think, guys, Jon Sumrall is. Remember, we were on Sunday with John Hartwell, my friend, and he's been on my show the last 3 years. He's known Sumrall since high school. Sumrall is sarcastic. He's funny. You're not going to outwork him. I mean, the guy. Everybody's talking about his press conference. I mean, God bless. He's up there. All of a sudden, he goes from making what he's making to what he's gonna make at Florida. Big deal. The guy is. I mean, he don't want to be in. He don't want to be in that stuff. He wants to get to work. I think Florida. I like. It's not Billy Napier 2.0. What I first thought about Napier, Billy Napier was socially awkward. He was low energy. And he worked for Dabo. And what we've got to do as a football culture is quit attaching greatness to anyone that ever coached for or had a cup of coffee with Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney or these other coaches. It's ridiculous. Right. It doesn't. Remember when Coach Bryant? My God, anyone that drove through Tuscaloosa when he was coaching was one of the Bears boys. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Right. I stopped at the Holiday Inn. He was eating breakfast. Does that make you a great coach? Hell no, it doesn't. Florida's talent will do that.
Right, no doubt. And, talking about that, and you talk about connection to Nick Saban and different coaches, Billy Napier, one in particular, Lane Kiffin, will be headed to LSU. And I'm not sure, I mean, that perspective of him becoming the Florida coach is not looking as good, I think, as it was based on different things. And now I haven't read anything yet. Zach, you could touch on it if you want. But the person at the center of all these hires and this hire is, or the process is AD Scott Stricklin. And Zach, you brought up, you talked to me. I mean, I really appreciate your candidness with me all the time, and your being forthcoming with thoughts and information. But you touched on a possible article that would be released based upon the outcome of the coaching hire. And I'm gonna let you just talk to you kind of, I don't want to say got after Scott Stricklin a little bit, but just put out some things that you thought needed to be addressed, and compliments to you as being a great writer and really jumping on top of this thing and having the commitment to it, the fortitude and just being, consistent with it and having, so I'm gonna let you kind of talk about it and kind of just your thoughts on this thing. And I will say before Zach goes into it, I am a proud Stricklin defender, of certain things because my thing is ADs don't call plays, they don't block, they don't tackle, they build stuff. And I think Stricklin deserves kudos for that. And has always been good to me, Loren Meadows personally. But there are some things that can be, have caught people's attention and maybe have been kind of put aside based on all the happenings, the national championship in basketball. But go ahead, Zach, and touch on that in your piece.
Sure. And first, I really appreciate the kind words about my writing. Yeah, I mean, it was something I was planning on doing in the event they missed on Lane Kiffin. That's exactly what happened. And I want to hedge it first with the story had nothing to do with Jon Sumrall. He's obviously mentioned at the top because at that point when I put it out, Florida had hired him. But it's not to discredit what he could accomplish at Florida. I wrapped it that way too, is to say, he could absolutely exceed expectations, external expectations, I should say, because naturally when you miss on your top guy and you pivot, settle might be the better word for your next best option. It's not great look optically in the eyes of the fan base, especially with the way the football program's just gone over the last few years, let alone the prospect of hiring another group of 5 coach. And again, I do think that comparison's unfair to Billy Napier, but it was set up for the fan base to be displeased. But the crux of the story, was about missing on Lane Kiffin because Scott, when he met with reporters yesterday, and I personally didn't attend his part of the presser because I was talking with Dave Caldwell. I don't know if we're ever going to get to talk to Dave Caldwell again. We never got to talk to Nick Polk. So I figured it was best to maximize time with the guy who's going to be constructing the roster. But I know Scott Stricklin was pushing back a bit on some of the narratives that were out there about Lane Kiffin as it pertained to Florida's search. Called him a fascinating guy. I think we can kind of tell what he means when he says he's a fascinating guy and that he doesn't want to comment about how some of the stuff went down. But from my perspective, what really got to me was when the reporting came out that Florida was shifting its focus away because of Kiffin's quote unquote erratic and irregular communication styles and effectively calling out his behavior. I think that makes total sense when you're going through a coaching search. If someone presents themselves to you as erratic or irregular communicator, naturally you'd want to move off the board. The issue is this is Lane Kiffin. We know that he is erratic. Right. We've known he's an irregular communicator. He's up to antics. He likes to troll. He's been labeled as immature basically his entire life until this rebrand at Ole Miss. And now, granted, it seems as though that may have been a bit of a facade as we're seeing some players come out and counter what he's saying about wanting to stick with the team through, or that the team wanted him to stick with the team through the playoffs. And it was clearly a messy situation. I'm not trying to take away from that. But the issue is Florida knew that. They knew it the entire time. They knew it up until they finally shifted focus. The reporting came out Friday. I think they're suggesting that they moved off around Wednesday or Thursday in that time frame. But bottom line is that's more than a month where you've got this information with a search firm readily available, vetted to you. You've known, again, about this guy for an extended period of time. He wanted the job last year, and Florida didn't move off of Billy Napier, but ultimately, therefore, didn't want Lane Kiffin. Even in 2021, he wanted the job. I'm confident in that. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't the coach then that he is now, but Florida just didn't even give him a thought. They knew who he was, and they weren't attracted to it. Let alone, it's the same coach that falsely accused Urban Meyer while he was with Florida of recruiting violations when he was at Tennessee. Same coach that's been fired 3 times. Just several other factors that were out there. And to give Kiffin a little credit too, this is a totally unprecedented kind of coaching carousel. For him, I mean, shoot, for Jon Sumrall or maybe Eric Morris, depending on who wins this American Conference Championship, we've not seen coaches get pulled away to bigger programs. I think it's totally fair to suggest that LSU pulled him from a smaller program, even though Ole Miss deserves a lot of credit for what's gone on. But this was going to happen in the way that the calendar set up. It was never going to be easy pretty. It was always going to be messy. So therefore, to give him a little bit of grace, again, you just stack all of those factors up. Florida only pivoted to Jon Sumrall seemingly when they knew they weren't going to get Lane. So the spin that kind of came out about how this was a Lane Kiffin issue, to me, does not pass the smell test. And that's where I got into it about how Stricklin has conducted this because it's just another blemish on his track record when it comes to managing and hiring coaches. I do think he deserves credit for fundraising and some of the other accomplishments that he's had behind the scenes. I know fans hate to hear it, but I think that there's reason to understand why the Swamp needs some renovations. I'm not saying that you should be fans of removing seats, but it is an older stadium that needs work on it. And that's going to be an accomplishment. The facilities, accomplishment. There are things that Scott Stricklin deserves credit for. When it comes to hiring coaches, he's got a bad track record, aside from Todd Golden. When it comes to handling erratic, if not outright problematic coaches, I mean, you look at Kevin O'Sullivan, and I don't want to touch on anything that's come out more recently than the fact that he's currently on a leave for an unknown period of time to address family matters, and his interim leaves the program a week later. Several months before that, suspended for the first 3 games of the season for his blatantly just inappropriate conduct with NCAA officials at the regional tournament. And we've known that Kevin O'Sullivan is someone that kind of walks to the beat of his own drum in other ways as well. Yet Florida's, aside from this 3-game suspension, has never really done anything about it. There's obviously the Cam Neubauer story. There's the Tony Amato story. And that came after Neubauer. I do think Stricklin moved on quickly compared to what happened with Neubauer. But you can raise the argument that he didn't vet him enough because this is a problem that he had at Arizona too. So you just look down the track record of Scott Stricklin, and it's apparent that, again, he's had problems with hiring and coaching and managing coaches. But then to suggest that Kiffin was just a no-go because of the erratic behavior he was displaying, again, it doesn't really add up based on what we know of Scott Stricklin's past, specifically as well as Lane Kiffin's.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that was a great take. And I mean, like you said, you touched on some things. I think it points to, a bigger issue. And maybe I'll ask Rob this. I've always had problems with, I thought Danny White did a good thing when he went to Tennessee. He came in, cleaned house. Totally restructured what they had been doing in Tennessee, whereas Florida seems to have been doing the same thing over and over and over. I mean, I guess I want to give one hire, to Stricklin. I think the Kelly Ray Finley hire is a good hire. And I think in a different landscape, it'd be a super hire. But maybe that's something you take Stricklin to task on too, is the lack of resource presented for a basketball program in the best basketball conference in women's basketball, and so you could throw that out there too. But Rob, is it fair to put all this on Stricklin? Do you look at a guy that's outside of Florida in the athletic director circle, a guy that's been selected for I think he was on the very first playoff selection committee or right there that he's been on the basketball selection committee, just to be fair, is it, I think Zach's spot on. So I don't want to belittle Zach, because like I said, I think Zach's excellent and it's but where do we start to examine the athletic directors? And is this a call maybe with the changing landscape, to really take a look at the UAA, who, if I'm correct, Zach, kind of works independently of the university? Take a look at that. I mean, you're in organizational stuff, Rob. You know how those things work. Your thoughts on that?
I think people are making Scott Stricklin a way bigger deal than he really is. Your coach has got to do it. I mean, the athletic director can hire him, but he's got to go out there and prove himself. And, getting somebody that's outside of the realm of the Florida family or whatever, it's risky. If the person doesn't understand what the job's all about. And you bring a coach. Jon Sumrall played in the SEC. Billy Napier played at Furman. Jon Sumrall has a smaller body of work, but he's played for conference championships every year he's been a head coach, all 4 years. Okay. Well, there's a trend there. Jon Sumrall is no different than a stock. The 200-day moving average for Sumrall is going like this.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have potential. He has talent. And what Florida's got to do, same thing every other school does, keep the boosters in their lanes. The coach has got to come in. You know, when Nick Saban came to Alabama, he cleaned house. Remember, including Saban's first year at Alabama, there'd been 8 of the 11 years through 2007, 97 to 07. 8 of those 11 years, Alabama lost 5 games or more.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately in year 2, they go 12-0, lost to Florida in the SEC championship game. Talk about the culture. Well, it's the standard. So what's the Florida standard? 2 or 3 years is what you've got to prove yourself now. Do you see where LSU is on the hook now with including hiring Lane Kiffin and his staff and paying Ed Orgeron not to coach and Brian Kelly not to coach? LSU is paying 3 different football coaches right now $162 million. That Doge needs to take a look at them. My God, that is such mismanagement. And I think we're not. If you think the federal government, state government wastes money, athletic departments are a horrible example. I mean,
Right.
Look, we lose our jobs, go find another job, figure out something. You are paying people not to coach. I will say this. I know who the agent is for Sumrall. I think it's Clint Dowdle. He worked for Sexton, left him August of 23. He's in Nashville now. Clint's a good guy. So is his dad. Great family. He's also got Mike Norvell. He's also got Marcus Freeman. I think Clint Dowdle has Alex Golish. Maybe it's going to be a little different. But
yeah. I mean,
I
it
think
definitely.
these coaches wanted $10 million. No, 7 maybe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to get what is Sumrall getting at Florida? 7?
7, I think, right?
Yeah.
Is that
7.4. I think his contract actually was like exactly what Napier should have gotten.
Seemed like
Florida
it, yeah.
after the deal that Napier got, it's a great deal.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. But for Florida down 61-62, minute 42 left, fighting a good fight for sure there. Cameron, definitely arguably the toughest place to play in all of basketball, not just pro or college. You know, it's rough there. So, but holding their own. So we'll see if the Gators can finish it off. Carlos Boozer's son is a grown man. He's taking Chinyelu to school, so as a freshman. So I mean, he's doing his thing for sure. So to put a bow on Stricklin, you know, he's going to be there. So once again, I'm here for the smoke. Kelly was a terrible Patrick D 1805. Kelly was a terrible what? How many women's games you go to? You look under the hood. We could debate. I'll have my own. So we could debate that all day long. I'm gonna call cap on that for sure. You really don't want to go there with me.
What was he talking about? Brian Kelly or
I think he was talking about Kelly Ray Finley and going with a proven winner there. You know, talking about a proven winner, my man, the animal, the host of Half Full and a Cup of Joe, my man, the animal, Joe, the animal Fulford is in the house. But Joe, give it to me. Come on. I know you.
Well, I do have a lot of, but first, let me just say what an honor and a pleasure it is to be joined with a guy like Zach Goodall of Swamp 247. I read your stuff all the time, my friend. You do an awesome job, and I got to try and get you on my show.
Did we lose Zach?
What is, but yeah. Anyways, I got to get you on my show sometime, so I got to try and get your contact information sometime.
I appreciate it. Yeah, without a doubt.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, Loren, but I do have some follow-up information on what Zach has been talking about, if you don't mind.
Feel free, sir.
Okay. And Zach, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but I'm going to spill it out anyways.
Sure.
And this is based on what I'm hearing, and Loren, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let us start with let's go back. Let's go back to the start of the 2025 season. South Florida.
Sorry to interrupt
Gators.
you. Boogie Flan just hit a 3 to put the Gators up 2 with
Yes,
30,
yes, yes.
30 seconds
30
left. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey.
Sorry. Yeah, but go ahead.
It's fine, because I'm watching the game.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let's go back to 2025. Florida's taking on South Florida. Florida loses the game big time. It is my understanding that is when the talk and the process began for Billy Napier to be let go as head coach of the Florida Gators. Now, the reason why I know all this is because of a phone call that got leaked. Zach, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know if you've heard the phone call, but I'm just going to kind of review
we have,
and try and get my impression of it.
Good.
So, Gators lose to South Florida. They start the process to remove Billy Napier. That's done. They start to interview Lane Kiffin. Now, the Thursday before Sumrall was named, there was a little comment that Gary Condren made, who's a well-known booster at the University of Florida, made some erratic comment. I forget what was made, but he made a comment that he didn't like Lane Kiffin. So from that standpoint, they decided at that point that they were going to move on from Lane Kiffin on Thursday night and start the process of hiring Jon Sumrall. They issued him a memorandum of understanding, and by Sunday, they had a contract. No, Saturday, to my understanding, they had a contract in place. Now, the reason why they did it so fast because they found out that Auburn wanted Sumrall. I think that there was another team. I think LSU may have wanted him. I'm not sure on that. But there were several teams that wanted Sumrall. They were moving fast. So for Florida, they had to move very quickly and get Sumrall signed. That's what they did. Now, here's the interesting thing about all this. 2 points I want to make out very clearly. Number one, the Condren comment that comes out on Thursday saying, I don't like Lane Kiffin. We should move on from him. Okay. That kind of follows in line with something that Rob Brown of SEC Sports Inside, which, by the way, Rob, always your pleasure to see me. It kind of follows the timeline because according to one of Rob's guests earlier in the week, he mentioned the fact that a contract was signed and agreed to for LSU with Lane Kiffin as early as Tuesday. So with that being said, it kind of fits in with the point that we don't want Lane Kiffin. We're moving on from them. They might have gotten wind that he's already signed, and that's why Jon Sumrall was hired. Here is another interesting aspect of this, and I'm going to get you guys' opinion of this. By Gary Condren issuing these comments, it's becoming clear to me that maybe it is Gary Condren that's running the show in the athletic department, and that Scott Stricklin and his puppet, so to speak. I mean, that's the way I'm hearing. That's the way I'm reading this. Now, here's another interesting thing, and I've tried to find this out. I don't know. I'm going to say it, but I don't know if it's confirmed. The stadium renovations act that you were talking about earlier and you're reporting and everything, it is alleged that the people that are doing the renovations are owned by none other than Gary Condren. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that is true, but I mean, it just seems a little bit strange that all this happens at this point in time. So, I mean, you guys can take.
Let me, Rob. You can. I mean, maybe somebody's got an echo come off the. But Rob, I mean, okay. He's got a contract. I mean, you know, his name's all over everything. I mean, I think that's if you say, and like to Zach's point, that okay, let's say Gary is running the show, and then Jon Sumrall wins the SEC in 3 years. Does it really matter?
But
I think we're getting into, and Rob, you can address that. I think we're getting in once again, we're getting into the fluff. And we're not talking about the football. If Jon Sumrall is the guy and wins at Florida, does it really matter? It doesn't matter. They're gonna. I don't care who builds the stadium. So if Gary Condren, I know he builds a lot of stuff. I don't know if they do that. I think he's more of a warehouse guy. So I mean, there are guys that build
Okay,
certain things. So he's a warehouse guy. So maybe that's a reach. But
okay, I'm sorry
Rob,
about that.
once again, we're getting out of the weeds of the football, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's the football. When you talk about Kelly Ray Finley, it's the basketball. Right. It looks better. It will maybe look better under Sumrall. You know, Rob, I think we got to grab at things because it makes us sleep at night, as opposed to like Zach has, you know, concrete examples of poor coaching hires. There, you know, maybe using his own personal vendetta to not hire Lane Kiffin, so to speak. You know, there was a show calls with Chris Kiffin that you brought up. I think it's once again we're getting out of the weeds of the breadth of things, so to speak.
Well, look, everybody in Memphis, we talk about it all the time. We know what Jimmy Sexton's like. This is all orchestrated by him. I mean, he is Steven Spielberg, you know, Oliver Stone director. This is all his deal. I mean, one of my closest friends lived next door to Jimmy for years. He and his wife used to sit out in the backyard in their pool, and I knew everything going on in college football pretty much. But we also couldn't say anything. And now I've got some stuff. I'll just say this much about Jon Sumrall. First thing he did when they fired Freeze was say, I want the Auburn job. Auburn tried to force him to keep certain people. That was John Cohen. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. So Saturday night, late Saturday night, I'm on the phone with, after another Auburn loss, winning football. I don't know what that is anymore. I'm talking with this guy, and he said, look, Kiffin just had, this is my friend that used to be a deputy AD at Ole Miss. He said, Kiffin had a meeting tonight, told all of his offensive staff members, if your ass is not on that plane, there's 2 planes coming in the morning.
I've heard that.
You're not going to have a job. Now, Joe Judge, he coached the Giants one time. He's quarterback coach.
Yeah,
and, you know, we'll see what happens. Look, Charlie Weiss Jr., we'll see about that. One of my closest friends, is very involved with Ole Miss, the money part. He knows the guy that gave $20 million to keep Kiffin. And when they knew Kiffin was leaving, everybody in the athletic department, I just found this out, has known for, as soon as Kiffin started this, they were like, he's out, or we're going to tell him to go because we're sick of it. So Auburn tried to force Sumrall, and that's Florida's game. Auburn got Alex Golesh. I got nothing against Alex Golesh. Pete Cordelli said on my show yesterday, they used to talk ball every 2 or 3 days a week for 2 years when Alex was at Tennessee. Relentless recruiter. He's keeping DJ Durkin. So Auburn's got a pretty good defense. And I know the people in the collective, they're going to spin it. Florida, this Sumrall thing, LSU was done for 2 weeks. Frank Duffy reported on our show. Man, people went after Frank. I know who Frank was talking to. He knew who the real estate agent was. He knew that the kid, Knox Kiffin, had been enrolled at University High School. I'm telling you, Lane Kiffin holds grudges.
Oh, without a doubt.
The show calls on Scott Stricklin, putting on Chris Kiffin. He didn't ever forget that. Lane's a narcissist. I mean, he is a narcissist on another level. Hell of a football coach. But I think Florida, get back to football, Jon Sumrall, look, I don't blame it. Like Brendan said this morning, Florida fans are tired of it. They are sick of it.
Yeah.
God almighty, you keep, it's like, what's for dinner? You know, mashed potatoes and pot roast. Again, you just get tired of it. You know what? You'll believe it when you see it. No, you got to see it to believe it. I don't know. I was wrong. I thought Florida could win big this year. But they were just spinning their wheels. It was a bad
thing.
But I think Sumrall and his staff, he's going to keep your eye on people like Kelly. I'm telling you, he went to Ohio State, gave you 1 good year. They won it all.
Let me get
keep your eye on Neil Brown too.
Right. Let me get to Zach. So Zach, we talk about, you know, and I guess they calling me a yes man. Anybody knows me. I know my boys messing with me, calling me a yes man. I said, I think people put way too much stock into ADs. You know, they're guys with glasses on. Some of them never played it down or played a little something, and that's about it. But you know, to kind of put a bow on this, and I just want to real quickly, because we got a big weekend coming up, so I want to look at the the college football playoff rankings to get everybody's kind of take. We got about 5 minutes. But, Zach, we're going to give you the last word on this. So, is this – I mean, okay, or maybe enlighten the folks that, because you really are in tune with this. Stricklin's not going anywhere. So people might well get used to that, number one. So please double down on that for me. But then what is at stake as a whole, or what is happening as a whole with the athletic department in Florida, and just all of it, put a bow on it, and then we'll talk about the football again next week.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, Scott Stricklin isn't going anywhere right now. Is there a chance that he's made his last football hire at Florida if Jon Sumrall doesn't work out? Yeah, I think that's a totally different conversation that we could have 3 years down the road, ideally at earliest, because I don't want to do this again.
Right.
No.
I mean, I don't know. I do think that there's a lot more influence on him than he's willing to publicly acknowledge when it comes to this booster base. At the same time, this booster base is real loud. And I don't mean to disrespect anyone who obviously is making a lot of contributions to what they hope is the success of the program. That's their hard-earned money that they don't have to be pouring into this for. But I don't know, man. The whole Billy Napier is hiring an offensive coordinator thing to me when I first got back here was baffling. It was all based on hearsay and conjecture. Even if they were being told, these boosters who are out here on the message boards and sharing stuff with reporters and sharing stuff with fans and drumming up narratives, they may have heard from Billy Napier himself or Scott Stricklin himself that something was going to happen. You don't need to be out here spreading that.
Hold on. We got to move on, guys. We got to keep it going.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I just I think that it's I think that people talk too much and create false expectations when things could just let them play out a little bit. And that adds to fuel to the fire when it comes to all of these outside narratives. What pisses Scott Stricklin off when he reads this stuff and some of it's inaccurate. And that I get. I understand why he has that perspective with some media or people that are out here talking, because it makes it seem as though there's even more influence going on that makes him look like a puppet, and he may be to an extent. There's certainly are other powers at play here when it comes to how he performs his job, but it's hard to really see through the fog because so many people love to assert what they think is going to happen because they come from a position of power and they've got the freedom to speak their mind. So I just wish that we could kind of all take a step back and let things play out more than everyone. I'm coming from the position of being a reporter who wants to be the one sharing news, obviously, but I also get my role. I just wish that everyone would understand their role.
Right. No, I totally get it. And remember who was the guy that said there would be no offensive coordinator all off season?
Boom and boom.
It ain't happening. But anyway, real quick, big weekend this weekend, guys. Let's be fans for a minute. I think Brendan's got the latest rankings for the college football playoff. Big weekend on tap. You got Alabama, Georgia, and the SEC championship game part 2. You got Indiana, Ohio State will probably be the most watched Indiana game in Indianapolis. Will it or will it not be a pseudo home game for Indiana? Because we all know Ohio State travels. And then Florida's very own Jon Sumrall going for a playoff berth if they should vanquish number 24 North Texas. So, a lot of big games. Pretty much Ole Miss and Texas A&M are house money. Depending on what happens with Alabama, they could slip in. Notre Dame looks to be a lock. Obviously, if BYU could upset Texas Tech, that could maybe move some shaking. I think a lot of people don't want that to happen, including Miami, because that would probably kick them out if they had 2 teams in, or maybe Miami jumps LSU. I know Texas is on the back. The one interesting thing, Rob, I like is at least the committee took into account that Texas did beat Vanderbilt head-to-head. So anything else stick out to you before we go and and send you guys good night, or just I think we're gonna have some great matchups this weekend, Rob.
I do too.
Yeah, and I think Big Ten bias. 80% of the TV sets in America live in the geographical footprint that's the Big Ten. They're making a big deal out of Indiana beating beating Penn State on the road. That's like clubbing baby seals, man. Come on, Penn State's pitiful, and so Diego Pavia has meant more to his team. I mean, you're talking about an impact elevator. He's up there with Cam Newton and Tim Tebow for what he's meant to his team. Diego Pavia is your Heisman Trophy winner. It's not worth even giving it.
Oh, definitely.
Anyway, he's the best player on his team, who's the most meaningful impact player. He's an elevator, Diego Pavia, and he may come back again. He's 30.
Yeah, no doubt. Before we let you guys go, we got to talk about our sponsors. Meldon Law, the only official law firm of the Florida Gators, proven and skilled lawyers since 1971. Gave out them big championship rings that we flashed last week. Really nice. A lot of people got 10,000, over 11,000 rings ordered. People were flashing those this weekend, wearing those. I mean, just doing a great job for the Florida Gators and in the Gainesville community. And then the folks at Titan MRI and Imaging, North Central Florida's newest premier, well, really not the newest now, they're MRI and Imaging, which makes them new premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. 2 locations in Gainesville, 1 in Lake City serving Columbia County, and soon coming to the folks in Marion County in Ocala, Florida. No insurance, no problem. Subscribe to all the SEC Sideline Sports on YouTube and other platforms. Zach, what are we working on for the rest of the week?
As you can see, there's like a little tired in my eyes right now because I just have not stopped.
I appreciate you taking the time with us, buddy.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have missed it. But it's,
you got recruiting, right? You got signing day tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God we got a shout out to that over at 247. I mean, I'll be helping Tyler out with that. But yeah, just continuing to turn away and monitoring potential staff movement. What's going to come of signing day. I think we don't have to wait we got a bit to wait on transfer movement, but who's to say we won't learn some stuff earlier than that? It's just a ton of moving parts right now, but we're trying to stay on top of it as best we can over at Swamp 247.
All right, Animal, tell the folks where they can find you and who we might have on the show Thursday.
Facebook, YouTube, X, A Half Full Cup of Joe, every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, or 11 a.m. Hawaii time, whatever you want to say. Anyways, we meet every Thursday night. Rob Brown of SEC Sidelines is going to join me, hopefully. Some guy named Loren Meadows might stop by. Zach Goodall. If you want to get the link from Loren, you are more than welcome to join me. I would love to have a conversation with you. I know a couple of your journalists there that work there at 247, and I would love to get your insights on everything that's happening as well. We'll talk about recruiting, talk about the backside of what happened, what to look forward to. By the way, one other note that this just happened a little while ago. Charlie Weiss has been given permission. He's going to go back and coach the playoff team, coach Ole Miss in the playoffs. So that's been went out tonight.
Rob Brown, who we talking to tomorrow?
Jordan Davis Hill, 247 Sports. We'll talk about Georgia and Bama. It was my prediction preseason, Georgia to win it all. I'm sticking with it. We'll also have Jacques Doucet checking in WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge. Nothing going on down there, just $162 million worth of coaches. And then we'll have Dudley Dawson inside Arkansas, talk about Silverfield up there, and Vince Ferrara from the Hill up in Knoxville. What's going on up there? Hey, I ain't happy with 8-4. I can tell you that. But I've never seen it. Last year we had no coaching changes in the SEC. This year we 5 or 6.
Wow.
It's crazy.
The game, man. We got to stop this craziness.
So I am going to take all this orange and blue from behind me, and I thought I had something, but I don't. But I'm gonna say, go Bucks! O-H-I-O. Let's go Bucks this weekend. But anyway, appreciate you guys joining us on the Lowdown with Loren Meadows, Zach Goodall, Swamp 247, Animal, Half Full Cup of Joe, Rob Brown, SEC Sidelines. I'm your host, Loren Meadows. Great show again, guys. Got a lot to look forward to. A lot of moving and shaking, and we'll break it all down next week. recording live from somewhere.
Thank
See you guys later.
All right.
Jack, good to meet you. Steven.